I'm here with Professor Gautam Desiraju at the Lodi Gardens in Delhi, and this is one of the first interviews that we are shooting here in Delhi ever since some of us moved to the city. And since I had to catch up with him over a filter coffee, then we decided we would talk something not about science this time or about something that he always talks about, but we'll talk about something that's very close to Delhi, which is Pakistan. Professor Desiraju, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us.
Indeed, it is a pleasure to meet up with you again, Sharan. And it seems that Delhi is agreeing with you. And looking forward to this because I'm quite interested in this Pakistan place. And I've been following events in Pakistan for some time, like many other interested Indians. I mean, to some extent, it is inevitable because we were part of one country about 75 years ago.
Yeah.
I myself was born just 5 years after partition. So I guess I'm a little bit aware of some of those things. And my parents, in fact, knew Muslims who migrated to Pakistan.
Right.
So I think a little more I know, although from a South Indian point of view, we have not been directly affected by partition like people in Punjab, Bengal and so on. But talking about this particular topic of Pakistan in these settings is somewhat ironical because some of the descendants of some of the people who built these tombs are probably on the other side of the Radcliffe line now. So it just tells you the ephemeral nature of boundaries, even like it's all like Ozymandias.
Correct.
So this was a very powerful king 500 years ago, and all that has happened to his tomb is it's become a park where all of us are enjoying, having some fun, and trying to catch a little bit of cooler air in this hot Delhi summer in the beginning of September. I cannot understand this weather also.
No, it's nothing. During the peak summer also, there's a lot of laughter and, should I say, love in Delhi.
You mean to say there's no love in Bangalore? We're too interested in making money.
Bangalore is perfectly suited for love, but not in freezing temperature or in extreme opposites here.
I really feel sometimes that it ought never to have happened even. The way in which India was going, and even if you look at the history of India post the British era or even before the Muslims, they were here for a long time. The fact that the first thing that happened, even Jinnah didn't predict that the border between India and Pakistan will be such a hard border. How did this border become so hard?
Right.
Was it a kind of madness that made them go towards Pakistan, towards Kashmir, already by October 47? What made them do that suddenly? Was Kashmir such a sacred project for them right from the inception? Jinnah wanted Kashmir, but I'm still not able to understand how the army was able to sell them this Kashmir line for so long.
Right.
This Kashmir Banega Pakistan. I have never understood how that line, they could sell it for so very long so that people could go there, join the army, claim that they were going to get this thing back and get this territory back to them. I have never really been able to understand, and the very formation of it sounds almost irrational, quixotic, comical even.
Yeah.
And the fact that one side of the Radcliffe line has developed so beautifully, full of dharmic, new civilizational, resurgence, and we're looking forward confidently to Amrit Kal and 2047 and things like that. And on the other side, it is a country which can be best described as a multi-organ failure.
Right.
So I mean, I'm looking forward to this conversation, and you know me well enough that the location of this conversation is also making me smile to myself.
Looking forward to this.
No, I mean, indeed, the point that Delhi has been the seat of many empires. And the place where we're strolling now is the seat of one of these former empires in Delhi. And as they say, he who controls Delhi controls India.
Right.
And
in fact, a lot of the things that I'm realizing once I come to Delhi, right, it's not in our cultural experience, so to speak, in the sense that recently I went to watch a movie, Gadar 2, and it was quite an action-packed adventure where Sunny Deol is lifting the hand pump and all of that. And I wondered why people resonated with that so much in Delhi. And I realized that even though partition has been done a long time ago, the sentiment and the geography is very close from here.
Yes. I would say that partition has been the defining event in the history of modern India. I think people hadn't realized it. And I think people who were growing up in my generation, it was still too close to the event. And maybe people were just so shocked that they kept quiet. But now there seems to be a greater emphasis on youngsters who have started becoming aware of their heritage, their inheritance, their culture, their civilization, and who are now more and more interested about partition and exactly what it was. And people are now even asking whether it was necessary or essential.
Right.
And I think there are also people on the other side of the Radcliffe line who are questioning as to whether this partition ought to have happened. And especially after the recent events of Chandrayaan 3, there seems to be a definite awareness there that we on this side of the Radcliffe line have done much better for ourselves than they have done.
Right.
And at the same time, they seem to be altogether aware of the fact that the DNA is basically the same on both sides. And so I think, like any rational people, the middle class, at least in Pakistan, seem to be asking themselves, where have we gone wrong and why have we gone wrong?
Right.
It's a natural enough question. I mean, suppose I put a hypothetical question to you. Suppose they had been the ones who had gone to the moon, and suppose we hadn't gone there, would we not have asked ourselves this question?
Right.
Where did we go wrong?
Right.
I mean, so I answer your question with another question.
But the fact that it has remained hypothetical and can't go beyond that speaks volumes.
I know. That's because maybe on both sides, maybe there is a total hesitation to speak about it. And now events in Pakistan have forced them to start accepting it. Especially something like partition did take place, and then now they're asking, was it required? Not that they particularly like India or something. I still think the majority of them may not like us too much, but they're asking, was partition required? And this raises all kinds of disturbing questions as to why partition happened and who was responsible for it. Because great many of the people didn't even realize till, I would say, 1940-41 that partition might take place.
Right.
And even as late as 43-44, there were many people who felt that it might or might not happen. So I have many unanswered questions. There are questions because were our political leaders doing it, or was it done at the behest of the British? What were the motives of the British? I mean, here we are in Delhi. You go to Vijay Chowk. You see the buildings that they put up there. In a normal way of thinking, would you think anybody who put up buildings like that was planning on leaving in 16 years? Would anybody in their right minds put up such a huge structure, imperial structure, if they were planning to go away very quickly? Why did they go away quickly? For instance, it's well known that Mountbatten came to India, I think it was early 47. And the idea was that India was going to become independent in 48 middle. And there was still no finality about partition. And the Simla mission was a failure and there was a deadlock. So nobody knew what was going to happen. Then he goes to England in April for a long stay, 14-15 days. Then suddenly he comes back and says independence is going to happen on the 15th of August. So the independence got preponed by a whole year.
Right.
Now what transpired in London between Mountbatten and the British Prime Minister to cause them to change their plans?
Right.
So suddenly. I think this is another big unanswered question. And so, was this Pakistan a result of some political machination? Now, I have read a book written by a guy called, I think, Iqbal Chand Malhotra, where he says that the major motivation might never have been Hindus and Muslims, but the fact that the British wanted to prevent uranium from going from Ladakh to Soviet Central Asia.
Right.
Because the Soviets had their main atomic energy facilities there apparently.
Right.
So to prevent that from happening, he claims in his book, and it seems to be a lot of evidence in that book, that the British didn't even care about Kashmir. All they wanted was Gilgit. Because Gilgit was on the road between Ladakh and Soviet Central Asia. So then he says that So they had to get hold of Gilgit, and then they seem to have taken a pragmatic decision that is so typical of the British. The British, as Lord Palmerston said, have no friends and no enemies. They only have interests.
Right.
They have interests at that time. At that time, they had to prevent uranium from getting to Soviet Central Asia. So they needed Gilgit. And so then they felt that it would be easier to control Gilgit if they had divided the country and got a small sliver of a country where they could control it. They felt an undivided India would be too powerful to allow them to even control Gilgit.
Right.
So apparently the decision for partition was not these things that Hindus hated Muslims or Muslims hated Hindus. Jinnah, to put it mildly, might have just been a very convenient person for the British who came up at that moment and then realized that there was something to be gained for him politically.
Right.
And I saw a podcast recently. I don't know, many people in India have seen these Pakistani podcasts, which have started appearing in the last week or so.
Yeah.
One of them was actually candid enough to say that Jinnah wanted a free plot of land. He wanted a free plot of land.
In fact, I think we can sit down.
And then he got it. He got the plot of land. And he says, what did he do after that? And he said he went and died 1 year later. And has left us with this free plot of land, and we don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So, I mean, he was honest enough and candid enough. I mean, I think many of us in India know so little about Pakistan that we didn't even know what the average middle class person, the lower middle class person in Pakistan is thinking.
Correct.
But when you see these podcasts, and now I am convinced that they are genuine. And the fact that we don't see Pakistani comments to these YouTube podcasts indicate to me that the government itself is preventing their own people from seeing those podcasts or at least commenting on them. I think the Pakistani comments are simply getting edited out systematically. So they're asking basic questions as to, what this so-called country that they got was all about. And I think the rest is history. After that, it became what you may call a rentier state.
Okay.
It simply lent out its real estate. Now, Sharad, I ask you something. Suppose you have a hotel. You got rooms. And then people come pay money, and if they follow themselves decently, they are allowed to stay in that room for as long as they pay rent, and then they go away.
Yeah.
Once they come in, the hotel proprietor is not allowed to go into that room.
Correct.
So basically, they have rented out their country to any foreign power who was so interested in using their real estate. After some time, they started renting out their army also. So they rented out not only land but also their army. So that is not the basis for the existence of any modern country, for any country at any stage of the game, in fact.
Right.
And then what happens? The country is so big. It is the 5th largest country in the world in terms of population. What do you do with, today they've got what, 25 crores or something like that, maybe a little less than that, of people. So what do you do with such a large country? And now, because of their rentier behavior and the behavior of the army, siphoning off all this money that they got from America in the time of the Cold War and also at the time of Afghanistan, I mean, they had 2 bonanzas and the Americans were just giving them limitless money. Then what do they do with all that money? 70 families amass all this wealth and try to push it all into London and other places.
Yeah.
So you can't, it's not the basis for the formation of a country. What about the welfare of all these people? Nothing was taken into account. It's no wonder then that the economy has collapsed.
Right.
And now today the Pakistan rupee has officially gone above 300.
Yeah.
People are predicting quite honestly that it will go up to 400, 500 also.
Usually these gardens are perhaps the best thing about Delhi, the gardens and the parks. There's so many parrots here. The first time, I got a place here, and I went to my balcony. It's a room on the roof. And I was inspired because Ruskin Bond, I think, wrote one of his first books called Room on the Roof. Actually, he didn't have a good time in Delhi. He went back to Landor because of that. But, he's in the literary field that's slightly different from what we do.
Exactly.
But Delhi is a very beautiful place once you settle down.
That's right. I mean, this country could easily not have been partitioned. And I'm sure Delhi would have been still the capital of, let us say, undivided India. And it's not a matter so much for us today, but I think it's a matter for Pakistanis to introspect. I think they now know that they have lost they've lost trust in the army. And Pakistan was always about its army. It was, as the popular joke goes, not a country with an army, but an army with a country attached.
Right.
And whatever else Imran Khan might have done or might not have done, he has definitely given the people of Pakistan a feeling that this army has not been acting in the best interest of the people. So coming back to what I was saying about rentier state, naturally if you behave so imprudently with regards to your finances, you will get to a stage where your currency has gone out of control. An economist told me a few days ago that he wouldn't be surprised to see it going to 400 or even 500 Pakistani rupees to the dollar in by 6 months' time.
Right.
So if that were to happen, already the petrol and electricity, the costs have become impossible for the common people to bear. And these IMF bailouts, small amounts of money, are only being given on the condition that they do not give subsidies on petrol and electricity. Now, I tell you, if petrol is going up, then the prices of all the goods will go up. And the salaries are not going up. So, as a result, you see wild prices. And frankly, I don't know how the common people are even managing with prices like this. I would feel that large-scale crime and all that will start. I think it has already started in many places in Pakistan. Lawlessness, overall crime based on money factors. I think it has already started happening.
Do you think this dream of undivided India is a dream that is transitioning and taking a different shape? By this, what I mean is, our two older generations perhaps saw it as a personal dream because some of them have actually seen and lived through the partition. And today you see the dream of a politically united subcontinent, which is presented in a different way, but there's no element of nostalgia as much in it.
I mean, I understand your question, but ruthlessly speaking, I think India has moved too far ahead.
Right.
And right now, it would be, I think, again, probably not very practicable for us. It's like a bit like a German reunification. The West Germans paid a very heavy fiscal price, monetary price, to bring the eastern portion back into West Germany and to bring them up to the standards of West Germany. I think that financial cost from our side will be too much. We have moved too far ahead. And it is not very clear what would be the benefits even to those people. So I think logistically and pragmatically speaking, and I think there is no more dream also. There is India, which is a very strong country, becoming stronger by the day. And as Prime Minister says, becoming in one of the 3 top economies in a few years' time. By which time we will become 7 trillion, 8 trillion, whatever it is. We are definitely going there. And I feel the dangers in Pakistan are far greater. I mean, they have a real danger of fragmenting into 2, 3, 4 countries. Something that has been speculated on and off.
Since we are on the topic of boundaries and maps and cartography, we've been facing somewhat of a really ugly standoff with China as well. The whole issue is because it has a deep seated issue with cartography. So somebody makes a new map, somebody claims a new territory, which they claim that it was theirs. In that sense, the partition also was, partition took birth because of Westphalian values, which are very clear. The British may have done it for a particular reason that they know was best to them. But ultimately, we today live in a world where, Westphalian values dominate our, global governance. So in that sense, even tomorrow, if say Pakistan goes through, Pakistan gets dissected, it becomes multiple states, boundaries are still going to be an issue in the future.
They are going to be. I'm glad you bring up Westphalia, because the era of the Westphalian nation state may be gradually fading in the world and especially in Asia. The maps and cartography is important. But if you look at world history over the last, say, 100, 150 years, every line that the British drew was a very cynical line which has not lasted the test of time. In our part of the world, the McMahon line, the Durand line and the Radcliffe line have all three caused innumerable problems to the people who live in these areas. There's no doubt. The artificial line they drew in Germany vanished. I mean, they themselves drew a line in their own country when the Republic of Ireland, they decided to split it off. They removed Burma and Ceylon in those days, it was called Sri Lanka now. They removed it from their Indian empire. So they drew lines in Iraq, Iran, Jordan, etc. with the breakup of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. So they have always been in this business of drawing these crazy lines. So I think it is now, will attest to the wisdom of the people in these areas to say boo to all these lines and try to act in their best interest. But coming back to the four things, in Pakistan, there are five broad divisions. I would say that you have the four original provinces of KPK, Punjab, Balochistan and Sindh. And then you have this fifth quasi area, POK and GB, Gilgit-Baltistan, which is legally and properly a part of India, which is an illegal occupation of Pakistan. So coming to these various ethnicities in modern day political Pakistan, the Durand line, the Pashtuns on both sides of the Durand line, whether they are in Afghanistan or Pakistan, feel part of a greater Pashtunistan. And they already don't respect the Durand line too much. And so they may freely move on either side. Balochistan has got a very troubled political history. Let's not forget that it was completely independent for 1 year between 1947 and 1948 when Pakistan took it over. So the Baluchis, of which a substantial number also live in Iran and a few in Sindh, so that forms a different ethnicity which is quite different. Sindhis are still altogether different with strong roots and memories still, collective memory of India. Because I mean, I've been to Karachi several years ago and the resemblance to Ahmedabad or the old city of Hyderabad is unmistakable. And so it still looks like a part of Western India. So that's still there. And basically, Sharan, it only leaves the rump state of Punjab. Punjab may be the place which is going to be the epicenter of all the trouble. This fifth one, which I said is a shady political status, this POK and Gilgit-Baltistan. The slightest kind of trouble, I would really represent Pakistan today as a patient, ICU patient with multi-organ failure. It could be economy, it could be the ethnic differences, it could be the fact that the army has been exploiting the people. It could also be that this country has no way of generating exports anymore. It never had a proper industry. Plus another problem, a very serious problem that has been talked about and not much, is the fact that that whole Indus river has never been desilted properly in its lifetime. And so very easily it will go on flooding. And after some time there will be no water for irrigation in most of Pakistan. At that stage, there's a specter of mass-scale starvation. It may already be there. We don't realize it. So under this kind of a scenario with a multi-organ failure, anything can happen and the patient can collapse. At this stage, I can tell you, without us firing a single shot, GB and POK will come back to India. Already they are shouting. If you looked at some of the videos last week, some Shia cleric was handled badly or by the Pakistan military. They have said that unless if that cleric is arrested or something like that, they're going to break the gate open to Kargil. Because let's not forget that Kashmir Maharaja built a perfectly motorable road between Kargil and Skardu. So for us to go to Baltistan and for Baltis to come here is very easy. Gilgit is a lot more difficult to access. Let's put it geographically. And that also brings up the very interesting case of Chitral, which was a part of the original dominion of Kashmir Maharaja. And legally speaking, I am given to understand that it is still a part of the Kashmir Maharaja's kingdom. So that when he acceded to India in October 47, technically and legally speaking, Chitral is also a part, we can lay claim to Chitral as well. Now, why do I say Chitral? Because Chitral is the easiest route to get to Gilgit. And for that, you need to access bits of northern KPK and northern Punjab.
Yeah.
And so that becomes then the easiest route to get there. So you see, this entire area, I would now call it the new great game. The great game, as you know, 100 years ago plus, was when the Russia and Britain and all were vying for control of Central Asia because they wanted the geopolitical thing. This is the new great game. There is Russia, there is China, there is India, and there is this very nebulous buffer area which you can call Pakistan or XYZ Stan. They can be any Stan, Baluchistan, Sindhistan, and it can be anything. But these are people who are going to belong. Now they've got an ethnic fracture also. So the utter artificiality of the whole Pakistan experiment itself is now can be called into question.
So one more thing is that you were telling me that climatologically and Pakistan as a state, the way it has formed, it cannot survive. That's a very interesting hypothesis.
If you look at big countries, stable countries, geographically, you talked about cartographically, but geographically, good and big countries have an expanse in latitude, that is the line area across, and they do not need much expansion in terms of longitude. If you look at Pakistan map, it's like a long thin strip. There is a lot of longitudinal variation, but very little latitudinal variation. So why is this? Because when you don't change your latitude, you generally don't change your climate. So when you have a country with a latitudinal expanse, then you have similar climates. When you have similar climates, similar kinds of crops.
आइए कोई problem नहीं है. Thank you.
Lots of people are coming.
No, that's fine. We can keep talking.
So when you have latitudinal expanse, you have similar climates and similar kinds of crops that are growing there. And you will also have similar kinds of people who are living there. Longitude, on the other hand, will have extreme changes in the weather. Take the weather in Karachi and take the weather in Gilgit. It could be, on two different planets. And when you have a country that has only longitude, different kinds of crops will grow in different places. And as a result, if you take big stable countries in the world, they will always have latitudinal expanse. And of course, very big and very lucky countries like India, China, Russia will have expanse in both latitude and longitude. So they become truly, in a position to have big power. And in this respect, the artificiality of Pakistan itself, it's almost that a country was created because they had to create a country very quickly. No matter what happened, that country had to be created. My own feeling, personal, Sharan, is that this whole Hindu-Muslim thing was some cooked up reason that they engineered. But the British did want this country very badly. And as a result, it got to the stage when they just wanted to do it quickly and clear out of the picture. And then leave the people to their deserts.
So that was more of an immediate trigger.
It was mostly for British policies. It is only an immediate trigger. Without a worry and care about the long-term consequences to them or to anybody else.
Because with the same or an even larger population and diversity, we've been able to exist under the same laws which were perhaps created 150 years ago.
That's right. It testifies to the great stability of India, or should I want to now call it Bharat. And this new Bharat, for example, doesn't therefore involve or include this small country which has now got itself into so many problems. And it is also very dangerous for all of us. By the way, this is another point. There are many people in India who are very sound and stable, who say that an unstable Pakistan is bad for India. I fully disagree with that statement. I feel that the more unstable that Pakistan becomes, the better it is for India. Because that Pakistan, it seems to me, can only go in one of two ways. Either it hangs on as a single country in its present form, give or take a few erosions at the peripheries, but it will be so weak and so useless that it doesn't matter for us. The other thing is it then becomes four countries with GB and POK coming back to us. At that stage, you will just have to deal with 4 weak countries.
Right. Which will be a bigger problem.
Which will be a bigger problem for them, not for us.
Right.
We will have, it's much easier to deal with 4 weak enemies than to deal with one stronger enemy.
Yeah.
So I think the way it's actually going
Yeah.
is that this is possibly these are the only 2 things that can happen to that country now.
Right.
And so it can only go in one of 2 ways. Either it can fragment into 4 or 5 pieces, or it can hang on what we scientists would call in a metastable state. Because I don't see any prospect of it being able to improve itself economically in the short term. And don't forget, in the meanwhile, India is advancing. They are no more our enemies, I say. You know, they may give us some pinpricks across the LOC or across the border and so on. But remember, at this stage, when a regime is collapsing, anything that they do is like kind of a gamble.
Right.
And some foolish person there may actually decide to take some sort of an action against India militarily or something like that. That would be sheer folly on their part.
Right.
I don't think they would.
They are more than prepared for it.
Nah, it's not only, they are not even prepared for it. They can't last out probably for more than a week if they try something funny. So I don't think that is an option. But if you ask me to bet on it, I feel some ethnic flare-up in KPK is probably going to be the fastest way in which, and once one of those ethnicities starts giving trouble, like a domino effect, the rest will catch over. Because there is some overlap between Pashtun and Baloch.
Correct.
But there are Pashtuns also in POK. There are even Pashtuns in our part of Kashmir.
Correct.
So Pashtun is a very wide fraternity. And there are some good books written about the Pashtun personality itself, which is very, very different from the Punjabi personality. So all these things now become fault lines in Pakistan. And I am of course sure that our people in the security agency, National Security Agency and the External Affairs Ministry and all this are well aware of all these things, and they have done a SWOT analysis on Pakistan. So they know exactly what it is likely to do, and therefore I am sure we are also prepared for any eventuality in this. But it's truly ironical that in the end of the day, something that the British created, almost like, it's easy to say divide and rule. They just wanted something quickly, they did it, and then they went away. And it should be not forgotten that first the British and then the Americans literally ran Pakistan for 50-60 years after that.
Right.
They never really gave up on that. It was still a sort of a, I won't call it sovereignty, but they had a great deal of control in what was happening in Pakistan. And so the full artificiality of this thing has only come out after the US people left Afghanistan, and also when this Pakistan ceased to matter from geostrategic concerns anymore. It is of no importance to anybody. I know we have not talked about China, but the interest of China in Pakistan seems to have been purely to do with access to the warm waters of the Indian Ocean and the port of Gwadar. And even there, the Chinese have not been very successful in being killed and all, you know. So they are not liked.
Correct.
So they have invested a lot of money without getting adequate returns for the same thing. And one thing about the Chinese as opposed to the Americans, they will put in money but they want returns.
Correct.
You know, the Americans will do it from part of their geostrategy and long-term concern. The Chinese attitude to money seems to be, at least as a layperson, with just access to public domain documents, it seems that their whole attitude towards Pakistan is different, and there seems to be a definite cooling off also in recent times. Today, we have made such good terms with the Gulf states, with Saudi Arabia, Israel. We are friendly with all of them. We are friendly with Russia. We are friendly with America. I mean, Pakistan that way is almost irrelevant to us today.
Correct.
It is really irrelevant. I don't think we should even think in terms of dreams and the fact that we were all one DNA or something like that. We might have been. But today, for Bharat to grow and become the huge country that it's going to become, don't forget our civilizational reawakening. So this civilizational reawakening that has happened, especially since 2014, but actually started with Ram Janambhoomi and the demolition of Babri Masjid. I think this whole process, the civilizational awakening, which simultaneously has led to and almost as a result, led to the demise of the Congress party. I think all these factors have now added up so that we become a huge and formidable force as compared to a puny country which is nowhere in the picture.
Right. There are obviously many calculations about what will happen with Pakistan. It depends on who you ask, but everybody has a theory of their own. But somebody from being a scientist, obviously, I think it will be quite unique the way you look at it. So what would your timeline be, and where do you think this is heading?
You are not just talking to a scientist, but you're talking to a chemistry professor.
Yeah.
And in chemistry, the whole subject of chemistry rests on two pillars, which we call kinetics and thermodynamics. In other words, kinetics means how fast will something happen. And thermodynamics means that what happens, is it the best outcome? Okay. And whole chemistry rests on the fact that what happens fastest need not always necessarily be the best.
Right.
I think there is a strange similarity between that and foreign affairs, especially as it concerns Pakistan today. So, what happens which is best for Pakistan, best for India, best for China may not be so relevant as to what is going to happen the fastest. So, and this fastest I think is slightly easier to predict. And if you were to ask me, I would feel that I'll put my bets on, let us say, a rogue personality from the Pakistan army trying to take some peremptory action against India in some isolated spot, inviting a Holocaust on himself from our side.
Right.
That could be one. Second one could be that the economy could simply collapse.
Right.
Because when a country collapses economically, the final stages are exponential and very difficult to predict.
Right. And this time beyond revival.
It's already, I think, gone beyond revival. But the question is then very fast. Then I would say, like you are talking about time, maybe by the end of this year, that could happen. The army rogue action can happen even tomorrow morning. That we can't predict. And this is what we call in science also the chaotic regime. When all models fail to predict anymore what's going to happen.
Right.
The other thing could be Imran Khan going in and out of jail and at some point of time raising a call to arms. And that could also cause the problem. The fourth thing could be also Shia-Sunni troubles in Baltistan. Like if that gate is open and they just charge in to India, then it is almost apparent that GB and POK will come spontaneously. And then the raison d'etre, the reason for the existence of Pakistan, namely grabbing India, Kashmir back, Kashmir banega Pakistan, that goes. And with that, the psychological makeup of the Pakistani will itself collapse. Already it has half collapsed after Chandrayaan 3. Do you realize that many common people in Pakistan know more details about Chandrayaan 3 and the Sun module to L1, that Aditya L1 point? There are 5 such points, by the way, and L1 is one of the metastable points where we are going, where we can observe the sun, albeit from a great distance. They know more about it than we do.
Right.
Can you imagine this? Pakistani people knowing more about things happening in India than we do ourselves. And they're being asked openly that if you get a visa to India to go and do some job there, will you go? Everybody is saying, yes, we will go. You know, it's actually an object lesson for Indian Muslims to listen to some of those things. When
But
those fellows, they
regardless of-
want to actually come here and they feel that it is better to work in India. So, a number of these things could happen, and I don't, frankly speaking, Sharan, in its existing form, that I don't give it more than a year now.
Yeah.
1 year. Thanks.
But regardless of what happens, it's going to be dramatic, is what you say.
Absolutely. And it's going to become a major security law and order problem for India, because suppose we have millions of people rushing across just for food. What are we going to do then?
Yeah, similar to what happened in 71.
It has happened before in 1971.
Yeah.
So suppose they come rushing across the border for food alone, nothing else. Just give us food, give us water. Now what are we going to do? So we have a major logistic issue.
Right.
Forget all the earlier things. I think those don't matter at all now. Now what exactly are we going to do at that point of time? Because I don't feel that whatever happens in Pakistan India neither has to instigate it nor will it be responsible for it.
Mm.
It's again talking in the language of chemistry, a spontaneous reaction.
Mm.
A reaction that doesn't need any extra activation to make it start off.
Yeah.
It will start off on its own. Like if you add sodium and water, it will just blow up.
Right.
So it's one of those kinds of reactions.
Domino effect.
It's nothing. So the whole thing is over with a bang.
Mm.
You won't even know when it's starting.
Mm.
So it could be one of those situations, but whatever it is, I think exciting times are ahead for us.
Oh, I'm sure.
And one thing, you started off talking about Delhi. I think when you come to Delhi, you realize you're that much closer to Pakistan than you are in, say, Bangalore or Madras.
Yeah.
So
it's much more scarier here.
Scarier or more fun, I don't know what it is, but somehow, although in the presence of these tombs and all from the ancient Islamic era, you almost feel that you could be in Lahore or something.
Yeah.
It could be like this in some park in Lahore. It could well be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so what shall I say? So, we kind of end where we started with Delhi and...
I had a line to say.
Yeah, tell.
That, I don't know if you watch Netflix a lot.
A little.
But, since Bryan Cranston plays in Breaking Bad, and then you're talking about Pakistan breaking down. So, what do you think it'll be called? Breaking Bad or something, because it suits it?
Breaking Bad. I don't know. I think a breakup of that country will actually help its own people who have actually, in the end of the day, I feel a bit sorry for the common Pakistani who has...
Because they're not able to access their resources, they're not able to
They
access
were never told,
rights.
they were never included, other people were controlling them. Then this army and those 70 families. I recently heard somebody sent me a video on some house in one of the 70 family things.
Yeah.
Recent video. That lady there is keeping a pet lion cub. Pet lion cub. How many people in India keep a pet lion cub in their house? So that is the kind of unimaginable wealth that they have.
Yeah.
And so a country like that, given any scientific laws, again as a scientist I will say, it defies all laws of economics, of science, of geopolitics, of everything. So such a thing is bound to crack up and explode completely.
Professor Desiraju, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It's been a great pleasure, and as you can see, I'm talking not in a scientific area, but this is something that I think any person who's observing the facts would have come to these conclusions. So I don't know if what I have told the audience is something particularly new, but I think with the last point you mentioned, the timing of things, I think I'm going to stick my neck out. Within a year, I think the whole show will pack up.
We'll wait and watch what happens. We'll continue this conversation 1 year later.
We can do that.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Do let us know what you thought about this particular conversation with Professor Desiraju in the comment section below. This is your host Sharan Setty signing off. Until the next time.